Great. Thank you very much, Shia. Thanks to everyone for joining me today. I want to really thank you for braving the cold, digging out of your driveways in Pensacola and wherever to come and be here with me today, right? Isn't that the great thing about virtual events? We just roll out of bed. We're here. We don't even have to, like fight the traffic or anything. So, all right, I just want to make sure, Shia, I think everyone's seeing my screen. That's the thing I usually mess up on the most.
We can see it.
Awesome. All right, let's dig in. Competition, right? That's a juicy topic. But here's the thing, when we think about competition sometimes, it's this kind of Genghis Khan, Larry Ellison, whoever you want to attribute this quote to. It's like back when we played sports or something. We just want to beat them so bad. We're so competitive, right? Oh, let's beat them, right? But that's if we think of the competition that way, we're putting this kind of blinder up in front of us, this mental block, where what we really want to do, and I love this quote, is we want to learn from the competition. Why do we want to learn from the competition? Of course, so we can beat them, right? So we can better serve a customer to beat them. So today it's not going to be some rah rah, ooh, you can beat that competition. I don't really have a pep talk for you today. Today it's going to be smarts and strategy, outsmarting them. And I'm a big fan of, I think everybody, whatever industry you work in, whatever discipline you do, whatever your art is, let's call it, you should find some very different art to learn from, right? So for me, yes, I definitely try to learn from marketers, but I also stand-up comedians. To me, that's so similar to marketing, right? You set up a value proposition, there's an offer, you see if you get a conversion, which in that case is a laugh. For me, Jerry Seinfeld, I learned a lot from him. And this was something I heard someone say to him on a podcast. He said, "You don't seem overly competitive, but there's something about excellence that you're obsessed with or animated by." And that's our focus today. Not competitive in terms of, ooh, let's outdo someone, competitive in terms of excellence, and let's learn from them, right? Because here's what I'm trying to do for you, right? You can try to be successful and you can try to beat your competition with sheer effort. You can just pound against that brick wall as much as you can. You can work 80 hours a week, 100 hours a week, all of that stuff. And good for you if you do. I mean, a lot of small business entrepreneurs do, frankly, right? But sometimes they're so focused on the competition, they overlook the fact and they're so busy working, they don't overlook they overlook the opportunity to find a better strategy. So that's what we want you to do, not just pound through that brick wall. Let's build you a ladder. Let's climb over that wall. Okay? So here's what we're going to talk about today. I think Shia mentioned this was like $500 to be here. No, I think it was free, but you're going to get your money's worth, right? We're going to go over the three types of competitors. I think many of you, I know I have in the past, overlooked two of these types of competitors. I'm going to show you examples of those competitor types. We're going to show you how to use that thinking to outfox your bigger competitors. I got two very specific scenarios here. I'm also going to show why it's so hard. I'm not going to be one of those presenters that say, oh, this is easy, go through and do this stuff. Look, this is not easy, right? I don't have tips. I don't have tricks. I don't have hacks. I don't have shortcuts. What I have is a methodology combined with your smarts and hard work, you wrestling with it, you will get there. I also mentioned it's hard to get started, right? We've got this great thing, AI now. Let's see how AI can help you at least get the ball rolling. It's not, again, I'm not one of those people that's going to say AI is going to solve all your problems, but can help you get there. And then lastly, I want to talk about some unspoken competitor types like no decision. And whenever you feel like it, like Shia mentioned, ask your questions. I got a bunch of slides here today. Trust me, they are beautiful. You're going to love them. But what we're really here today for, live, interactive, in the same place at the same time, not physically, but virtually, is to help you. So if you have a question, as Shia mentioned, throw it into that Q&A. He's going to interrupt with as many questions as we can because we're here to serve you today. But briefly, I'm not going to get into it. This is me. You can see my LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter is my email address. If you want to reach out to me, I put my LinkedIn at the very top of the comments. I will share these slides after this presentation as soon as I can. I will put all these slides on LinkedIn. They've got a lot of resources you can use. So feel free to go to that LinkedIn right after and you'll get them. But I think I don't want you to know about me like ego bragging, blah, blah, blah. Who cares? The only thing that you're probably asking now is why the heck should I listen to this guy? Competition is hard. How does this guy know anything? And if I know anything at all, it's not necessarily for my own efforts. And yes, I've done those things. I've worked with competitive sales offices and major software companies. If you know what that is, they look at every win-loss, every time they've won or lost against another company. They analyze it and evaluate to understand why they won or lost, what they can learn about the customer. Again, that's the type of approach we're going to take today. I wrote case studies about that. But a big thing I've done is I've been at Marketing Sherpa for the past 16 years. And if you're familiar with Marketing Sherpa, I write case studies. I write data articles. I interview marketers and leaders and entrepreneurs on the How I Made It Marketing podcast. So I've talked to hundreds, probably at this point, thousands of marketers and entrepreneurs, big businesses, small businesses, leaders, marketing managers, and I've learned from them. And those are some of the examples you're going to see today. Also, just to get an understanding of the company behind all this, MeclabsAI. Again, we got Marketing Sherpa, Marketing Experiments, MecLabs Institute. We've been doing this since the turn of the century. It's a kind of funny term, but the late 90s. conducted 10,000 marketing experiments, and we have this patented methodology, and I'm going to teach a little bit of that today as well. If you've been on some of these before, you've seen a little taste of that as well. So that's why you should kind of listen to me, understand me, believe me, and know that you're going to get some value today. But let's jump into the 3 types of competitors, right? And this isn't something we came up with. This is common business knowledge. I even asked AI, hey, who originally came up with this? They're like, this is just a common business strategy. So you might have heard of this before, but we're going to show examples of these. I just want you to understand what they are, right? So let's start with direct competitors. They've got similar products and revenue goal. I probably don't need to teach you that. You probably know who all of your direct competitors are right now. Your customers might even tell you about them, right? That's probably where you're focused. We're going to talk about that some. But here's the other 2. When I've presented before, this is what's really helpful for people to think of a new strategy, a new approach. Indirect competitors, right? They've got a similar product, but there's a different revenue goal. And again, this is where I say outfox your bigger competition. You should think of, okay, who are these competitors for you? But you should also think of, if you're going up against bigger competition, who could you be this type of competitor for? Because if you can have a similar type of product to serve that customer need, but a different revenue goal, can be very successful. And we'll show you why. Replacement competitors, right? They've got a substitute product, not the exact same product, but they're going for that same customer time and money. And again, I'll show you an example, but I want you to think of this in 2 ways. And feel free to use a chat, brainstorm with each other. It's a great way to network and kind of put your ideas out there. I want you to think of this not just like, okay, where am I today now? Where is my company? And who are my direct, indirect, and replacement competitors? But where could I be to become an indirect or replacement competitor to competition and sometimes bigger competition? Now, there are some of what I call the unspoken competitors. We're going to get to this at the end. That was not really the intention of this webinar, but I don't want this to be a block for you to learn the things we're going to teach. I want you to know we're going to get there, right? These are not probably official competitors. I call them unspoken. There's no decision, which for many of us, it might be our biggest competitor. And there's DIY, the customer just doing it themselves. And the reason I want to get to this at the end, the first time I presented this in our AI guild, MecLabs has an AI guild. This was some pushback feedback I got from people like, oh, I understand those 3 types of competitors. My biggest competitor is no decision though. You're not talking about that one. So we'll get to that. I'll give you some tips about that, but that really doesn't affect the strategy we're talking about today. I just don't want that to be a block for you. So let's look at some examples of the competitors I just talked about, right? So I use Starbucks because we all know Starbucks, right? What's a direct competitor of Starbucks? Well, you got things like, and again, this is, and I'm explaining this is partly how you define it. You got things like Pete's Coffee, Gregory's Coffee. Here in Jackson, we got Southern Grounds, Bold Bean, Dunkin' Donuts, even Keurig, the home brewing systems. You might look at that as, well, it's a similar product and revenue goal. That's Starbucks' direct competitors, right? But now let's look at indirect competitors, right? And a lot of these indirect competitors came along because they saw what Starbucks was doing, right? So you got McDonald's or Panera, right? They can offer a similar product. You can go there for coffee if you want, if that's what you're getting, if that's a product you're getting from Starbucks. But and this is why the different revenue goal is so important. McDonald's or Panera might not need to make money off of the coffee like Starbucks does. That could even be a loss leader for them, right? Starbucks, I was recently, oh my God, I think it was almost like $7 for, I want to get like a peppermint mocha, venti or whatever. I'm taxed almost like $7. Well, maybe McDonald's and Panera don't have to charge that because they're going to make monies off the sandwiches of their burgers, right? See? And that's why being an indirect competitor can be so effective. Right? They're pulling in that demand from the coffee, but they don't need to make that money off it. They can charge less. Capital One Cafe, have you heard of this? Capital One, they're a bank. They're a financial company. They're a credit card company. Why the heck are they selling coffee like a Starbucks? Well, they're smart. They see people like coming to Starbucks. Let's get them in. Again, Capital One doesn't need to make money on the coffee. They could pull people in there. They can outcompete Starbucks that way. And then they can sell their financial products or whatever, right? I mentioned Chambliss Uptown Bookstore. If you know that here in Jacksonville, just really any local bookstore. Again, bring people in with the coffee, make money on the books. Gate gas stations. I don't know their business model, but they can sell the same coffee, sell it cheaper, make money on the gas, right? So that's an idea. Hopefully you get an idea for indirect competitors, replacement competitors. Substitute products, same customer time, money. Jacksonville Public Library. I'm not going to put in the chat right now if you have an idea of why the Jacksonville Public Library might be a replacement competitor for Starbucks. All right, put that in right there. I'll mention some of these others. I want to see what you guys think about why would the Jacksonville Public Library be a replacement competitor for Starbucks, a for-profit corporation versus a government service. All right, Metro Diner could be a replacement competitor, right? Because maybe if you're looking at like, the customer time and money is the breakfast time slot, right? But it's a very different product. Well, for breakfast, you don't necessarily need, to-go coffee. It might be a sit-down restaurant, right? Red Bull, you consider a replacement competitor. So if that customer what job is Starbucks doing for that customer? If it's a caffeine delivery system, then Red Bull is also a caffeine delivery system, right? It's a substitute product, same customer time and money. Regis co-working space. That's also one. What value is someone going to Starbucks for? There's probably an ideal customer that's just going there to work. They could go to Regis instead. All right, I don't see any comment. Oh, wait, I got to slide down here for the new messages. This is my screen. All right, third space, no cost, free Wi-Fi. Thank you, Lindsay. Yes, that's why Jacksonville Public Library is a competitor, a replacement competitor for Starbucks. It's that third space. If you know, that's the famous thing that Howard Schultz and Starbucks talked about. Our first space would be our home. Our second space would be our workspace. That third space is like the famous, if anybody remembers Cheers, the famous show Cheers, that bar was a third space. Starbucks could be a third space. Publix could be. It's no cost to sit around there, right? So that's why they can really outcompete Starbucks in that sense. And they got the free Wi-Fi like Starbucks have. So great. Good thinking, Lindsay. I think a lot of other people put that in as well. But, and Libby, I hope you heard and understand. Third space, our first space is where we work. Our second space is, our first space is our home. Our second space is where we work. And our third space is where we go to collect with a community, with friends, like the bar and Cheers or like Starbucks. All right, I'll give you one more example here of these competitor types you understand. This is from our own stuff, so it kind of may be more relatable than a giant company like Starbucks. MarketingSherpa, maybe some of you attending might be familiar. We used to have these summits, these big conferences, these events, 1,000 people attending at the Aria in Las Vegas, right? So who are our competitors and why did we change that strategy? I'll explain to you if you're familiar with MarketingSherpa, we don't have those in-person conferences anymore, and here's why. Direct competitors, right? A marketing profs conference. You could decide, I'm going to go to the MarketingSherpa conference or the marketing profs conference. Fine. I'm going to skip down. Replacement competitors, a virtual event. That could be, you don't need to go to an in-person event if you just want the information. That's a substitute product, but it's that same kind of time and money the customer's going for. Now here, to answer the question, why did MarketingSherpa stop doing live conferences? Here's one of the key reasons. And also, I am so fortunate and thankful that we stopped almost right before COVID. We're very lucky there. But we realized we had an indirect competitor, and that was Dreamforce and similar events. So if you're familiar with Dreamforce, it's put on by Salesforce, big CRM, ESP, and Salesforce, again, it's a similar product, a different revenue goal. Similar product, you can decide to go to Dreamforce or the MarketingSherpa conference, but it's a different revenue goal. They're making money off of selling their software. They don't need to make money off the event, right? We, MarketingSherpa, we're holding an event. We need to make money off the event. So it's very hard to outcompete them. And the way I would discover this, and this might give you ways of discovering it as well, is talking to our attendees a lot. Every chance I had, I would talk to an attendee, eating lunch at a networking event, whatever it is. Why'd you come here? Where else do you go? What goes on? And what I would hear more and more is, well, I can go to 1 or 2 events a year, whatever it is. And so, next year, my company's only let me go to 1 event. Since I'm a Salesforce customer, I'm going to go there. And partly too, and I'd say, well, don't we have better content? We have these case studies on stage. We're interviewing real customers. It's not about, we're not selling any software to you, right? That's not, we're just helping you. We're interviewing all these CMOs on stage and stuff. And they said, yes, I like the content here better. However, Dreamforce had Eddie Vedder or Imagine Dragons or Hillary Clinton or the Dalai Lama or whatever. And you know what? I got 3 kids at home. I want to go to a big party in San Francisco and I want to, rock out with Imagine Dragons. And so that's when we realized, right, what we were selling, the product we were selling it on was very high quality content. We had these big parties at Las Vegas clubs as well. We had minor celebrities like the guy from Freakonomics, the guy from Morgan Spurlock, and these people as well speaking. But right? We couldn't compete with having the Dalai Lama or Hillary Clinton, whoever Salesforce could, because they didn't need to make money on the event. So we realized we might be a better direct competitor, right? But because they were an indirect competitor, we couldn't match that with the revenue goal. And I say that because, again, this could be your chance to outfox some bigger competition. So let's talk about how to use that competitor type thinking. I'll introduce you a bit to the MecLabs value proposition methodology. And this is this will be my only inspirational slide just to kind of pump you up. So what I hear often from, and I think, the SCORE community is mostly the smaller businesses, solopreneurs, small business entrepreneurs, and these sorts of things. What I hear from them is it's so hard to compete against the bigger competition because I don't have their budgets, I don't have their staff, right? It's hard to think of new ideas while executing, like I can't compete with them. But here's the thing you don't know if you're a small company. I interview lots of marketers, some very high-level marketers at some very big companies, public companies, private equity funded companies. And do you know what they tell me? They say it's so hard to compete against smaller competitors because we have so much bureaucracy and it's so hard to change anything and it's so hard to maneuver, right? So that's my pep talk for you. If you've got some bigger competition, you're frustrated. Oh my gosh, my Facebook advertising has gotten so expensive or whatever it is. I can't compete with this big competition. Those big competitors, yes, they're probably doing well, bringing in a lot of money. They feel the same way. And so I made this visual with AI for you, right? You have a jet ski. That is what your small company is. And I might agree with you if you say, I cannot get across the Atlantic Ocean with my jet ski. I cannot put in here at Jacksonville Beach and go over to France. I would agree with you, right? Those big companies can. They've got this massive ship. Okay, they can sail across the ocean quickly. But what can they not do? They can't turn very nimbly, can they? In your jet ski, you can go circles around them. And that's your chance. And hopefully I give you one, maybe or two quick ideas on how to pivot on a product, a strategy, an offer, even something very small on how you can kind of outfox that competition. That's what we're talking about. You've got that maneuverability that they don't. All right. So we'll look at some examples. But first, if we're going to outcompete our competition, we have to ask, how do customers choose between your company and competitors? So MecLabs, again, we did a lot of testing. I'll mention at the bottom of the screen, you'll see there's a source link. We have a lot more free content on everything I'm going to share with you today. I'm going to share cases. I'm going to share a lot of stuff there. There's articles, there's videos. If you want to dive deeper on any of this stuff, I only got less than 60 minutes with you today. I can't get that deep. It's pretty, surface level. You can dive deeper on any of this. When you get the slides, just click on the link at the bottom. Go as deep as you want. As I mentioned, my LinkedIn is at the very top of the chat. I'll post it to LinkedIn right after. So I encourage you to go deep. But essentially, if you've been on a SCORE webinar with me before, if you follow MecLabs, MarketingSherpa, you've heard this before. It comes down to the value proposition question, right? That's how customers choose. They ask this question subconsciously often. That question is, if I am your ideal prospect, why should I buy from you rather than your competitors, right? And when we go deep into value proposition, we unpack that because there's a whole other thing we're not going to get into today about making sure you've got an ideal customer profile. You understand who that ideal customer is, and that can affect how you compete. But let's talk about that rather than your competitors, because that's what we're really talking about today. It's not just, hey, would I buy this thing? They've got other options. And a lot of times companies overlook that other option, right? So this is a little complexity. We'll unpack it. So we call the net value force heuristic. A heuristic is a thought tool. We've got a lot of these thought tools that help marketers think through different methodology and processes. Our most famous one is a conversion heuristic. You can Google that. It's all over the place. And I just want you to know and think of it this way. I live right across the street, right here in Jacksonville, from Johnson & Johnson Vistakon. They make contact lenses, right? And when they make those contact lenses, it's not like, oh, good, today, Monday, Fred's here. And Fred is really good about making contact lenses. We're going to get some good contact lenses. But then it's Wednesday. Oh no, Brett's in. Man, Brett doesn't make good contact lenses. We're not going to get good ones, right? No, they don't. How could they operate a contact lens business that way? They've got a methodology. They have a repeatable methodology that who's ever manning that contact lens line, they're going to have good contact lenses. And so when you look at some of these methodologies like this, and I mentioned we have other ones, the whole point of teaching you a methodology is in marketing too often, and in business, it's just someone's got the golden gut and someone doesn't. You're lucky you get that good freelance copywriter, you hire someone good for your team, whatever it is. Oh, they just get it and others don't. What you need is a repeatable methodology. And that's what I'm going to teach you here. We have 10 more of these heuristics I won't get into, but that's the whole point of this, right? So breaking down what you just saw on the other slide look fancy, you just need to know these 4 things. If you want to make a forceful value proposition, it's got to have appeal, right? Your customers need to want it. That makes sense. You probably are doing that. It's got to have exclusivity. That's the I can't get it anywhere else, right? That's where we talk about differentiating from competitors. Clarity, they need to understand it. You would be surprised how often this is a challenge. This is why advertising and marketing often fails. As I mentioned, I walked into the B2B. I used to work in the B2B enterprise software space. Try going to many B2B software companies' websites and understanding what the heck they actually do. They're scalable and they're this and they're that, but they use all these buzzwords, but you don't know what they even do, right? Credibility, lastly, this is also a challenge. You can make any claim you want in the marketplace, any claim, but are customers really going to believe it, right? You need that credibility. All right, rather than your competitors. So again, you see some stuff grayed out. That gets into other parts of the methodology. I want to focus on number 4. That competitor part, you need an only factor, right? And let's talk about what we mean by an only factor. We need that appeal and that exclusivity. One or the other is not enough. It's that overlap. where they want it and they can't get it from anywhere else, right? This may seem obvious, but I'll tell you two specific examples where it's not obvious. One, earlier in my career, I worked in the EHR, electronic health records industry. I was earlier in my career, fairly new to stuff. And partly by working with this company, they weren't that funded yet. So I took some stock in exchange and for actually getting paid, right? But boy, it seems so cool what they're doing. It was amazing. This is going to hit. It's going to be great. They were not a big success. I did not understand it until I looked into it. And I did not realize and do my research at the time. They had these great, when I saw the functionality they could do from the difference between paper records and electronic health records, oh my gosh, who wouldn't want this? The challenge was what I didn't realize, there's 1,000 other companies that were doing it at the same time too, right? So appeal is good, it's not enough. Exclusivity, let's talk about that, right? We worked with a company directly, I won't mention their name, but they basically sell music to restaurants and stores and all this thing. I won't get into it, but you can't basically just play music on your radio because there's licensing, so they sell music. So they had this one feature that was exclusive to them where it's like the owner could choose exactly like the order or choose what music plays, or they can get very deep into controlling the music, right? So there was exclusivity there and they promoted it a lot, but you got to step back and think like, wait a minute, that's exclusive, but there's a hierarchy of needs that customers have. And that might be the 8th or 9th need. If you have just a local store, you just want some music playing, you're focusing on other things. So when you have exclusivity, make sure that it's appealing, it's top for the customer, that they're going to buy off their first, second, third, fourth need. You might have that exclusivity, but if it's the 9th or 10th most important thing to them, right? You might have a small niche, but most customers are not going to act. So let's look at some scenarios now. I want you to give you some real world scenarios of how you can apply this. So put yourself in these shoes, for example. I know you've all got bigger competitors, and when you focus on your own competitors, sometimes it's hard to think because you're kind of locked into that view. So let's pretend that your bigger competitor is Gatorade, right? What would you do? Think about it right now. You can put some ideas into the chat. What would you do? Gatorade is your bigger competitor that you have to deal with, right? They owned an 80% share of the sports drink market. They were owned by Pepsi, a multi-billion dollar company. They've got massive budgets for advertising and sponsorships. This is the exact thing that small businesses tell me all the time. I could never compete with a Gatorade. Let's take a look at an example of how one company did. It seems obvious now when you see who it is, but in hindsight at the time, Gatorade owned everything. So I interviewed on How I Made It Marketing, Derek DeTenber. Right now, he is the Chief Marketing and Merchandising Officer at Batteries Plus, but he previously worked at Gatorade. You can, as I mentioned, if you want to listen to the whole episode, shared a lot of good insights. You can click on that link at the bottom. One of the things he was telling me is when he worked at Gatorade, right, they were so focused on their competitor, Powerade. And they didn't want to lose a point or even a 10th a point of a share to Powerade. That was their focus. And they were doing good, right? But then at some point they realized, the business was slowing down, but it didn't make sense because they weren't losing share to Powerade. So real quick, who is Powerade? What type of competitor? Anyone remember the type of competitors? Who is Powerade? Let's see if someone puts it in there real quick. Right, they were losing. That's right, direct competitor. They were so focused on that direct competitor, but what was happening? There were these smallish new brands, these upstarts, like vitamin water, right? And these are his words exactly. They were stealing the occasions that, frankly, Gatorade and Powerade didn't really have the right to win. A flavorful refreshment, but at a much lower calorie, right? So let's unpack that. This is exactly what he told me. Let's unpack that together. Because I also want you to realize you don't need to take all of the market share from your competitors, especially the bigger competitors, right? A common mistake I see from startups is they talk about TAM. If anybody knows what TAM is, put it in the chat. I'll tell you what it is in a minute. They will say, for example, I'm a cybersecurity marketer. The TAM of this market is $800 billion, right? I have a cybersecurity company. TAM, real quick, it doesn't seem like people have heard it before. It's total addressable market. So you would think, a lot of companies think when they're going against total addressable market, let's pick the biggest total addressable market we can, right? That's very hard, again, unless you have the massive budgets, right? You want to pick, listen to me now, the smallest total addressable market that is profitable to you. So don't pick the whole cybersecurity industry. You will not have a strong value proposition there. You will not have an only factor. Where is your market where you have a good, strong only factor? So let me show you. So for Gatorade, let's talk about two different types of customers. This was a replacement competitor, vitamin water, right? So remember what that means is there was a substitute product for the same customer time and money, right? So they didn't take all of Gatorade's market share. They didn't try to compete with all of Gatorade's market share. For customer one, let's say, they were looking for, they're a hardcore athlete, intense physical activity, looking for that post-workout drink. Gatorade's still probably the best choice. And I will mention too, I'm a University of Florida alum. I love Gatorade, right? Anyone who went to the University of Florida loves Gatorade. Not trying to diss them. They're not trying to compete there. But customer two probably honestly just didn't want to drink soda because they know that's junk. They also didn't want to drink water because it's plain. So just looking for a health conscious consumer. And that's where vitamin water came along and was better able to serve them to be that replacement competitor. It's that same customer time and money, that thing they were looking for with a different product. Not trying to make a better sports drink, making something different, right? So hopefully the wheels are churning. You've got a bigger competitor like Gatorade. What can you do to become a replacement competitor for them? All right, I'm going to talk about another scenario in just a second. I want to mention briefly, we got tons of free resources. You can go super deep. MarketingSherpa, we got case studies, data articles. This might not be the exact challenge you're facing. You might be facing another challenge searching there. We got a case study of how someone else overcame it as well. How I made it marketing. I mentioned free podcast. I go deep into the careers and campaigns with marketing leaders. We got a free course teaching our methodology, become a marketer philosopher. We got an AI Guild, a whole group where we go deep with on all of these different methodologies together with AI. On February 12th, we've got an event there at 2 p.m. It's totally free. You can sign up at MeclabsAI.com/conversion. That kind of teaches you how to take the expertise you've built up in your career and how to put it into an AI, make your own custom AI with no tech skills and sell it. So just want to mention there's a ton of free tech skills. You can see those, a ton of free resources. You can see those in the slides. Okay, let's talk about a second scenario. So in the first scenario, we talked about the value proposition. That's pretty much the primary value proposition for the company. But there's other ways to compete. And a challenge with the primary value proposition is, which I hear often is, I can't affect the primary value proposition of my company. Now, that often happens in bigger companies where they have a challenge affecting the primary value proposition. That's the nice thing about being a small company. You can affect that primary value proposition, but still, there are other value propositions I want to tell you about. But first, I see Shaya says we have a question from someone.
Thank you. All right. So first question is from Sarah. She said, this was a little while ago, so I was waiting to see if we got another question. So she
Sure.
said, can you define different revenue goals?
Right. It's a different revenue goal. So that's the example I gave, for example, was when we were going up against, Salesforce with an event, right? Our revenue goal is we needed to make money on the event. The reason that Dreamforce could perhaps outcompete us, I mean, we're worried they were, is they could have that event. They did not need to make money. They made money on the software, right? Or like when we talk about Starbucks, right? They need to make money off of coffee. McDonald's could sell you the coffee cheaper and make money off the breakfast sandwich or hamburger or whatever it is, So does that make sense with the different revenue goals? And that's why it can be so effective. And we're going to look at another example of that here too.
Awesome. Next question is from Lindsay. What about when the product is the same? Healthcare, for example, does not differ from company to company.
Okay. I want you to keep that in mind because the next example I'm going to show you is actually from the jewelry industry, but it's going to be a perfect example of that. So keep that in mind whenever we're going to hold that question in mind because the example I show you is going to be perfect for that.
Awesome. That's our last question. Thank you.
Perfect. So let's talk about different levels of value proposition. This, frankly, also partly answers that healthcare question. So there is the primary value proposition, but there are different levels. There's a prospect level of value proposition, right? So you might have multiple customer types, right? For example, with the Gatorade example we saw, there's different types of customers that would use Gatorade. Starbucks, there's different type of customers that would use Starbucks. Some just want the caffeine. Maybe Red Bull can compete. Some want the third space. That's where the public library can compete, right? There's a product level, right? You might have an overall company with different products. Each product needs to have a value proposition. And last, there's the process level, right? Can you outcompete the process level? I'll mention a quick example for healthcare. I was at I won't get too specific, but this morning, actually, I was downtown with my wife at a medical provider. And, we step in and the appointment was at 10 and I didn't want to let Shia down. I want to be here on time, but, I thought 3 hours. And we step in and my heart sank. I didn't realize how big of a medical provider. There was a long line just to even sign up, just to even get in to check in. And this process was, now once we got going, I'll admit they improved. But one level with healthcare that you can outcompete on is the process level, right? Is it just better service? Do you not have to wait in that long line? And I'll show you an example of that. But think about the process level too, and all the processes that you ask customers to go through. And there you're out competing on, they could take any different action. Why do you want them to take this action with you? So I want to look at an example of rings, right? So here's what I'm saying. Let's say you sell rings. Signet Jewelers is, I looked this up, the largest seller of fine jewelry, watches, rings in the North America, $6.7 billion with a B. You might not have heard of Signet, but I'm sure K Jewelers, Zales, Jared, you've seen them around here at St. John's Town Center, they have News Mall, whatever. How on earth, if you sold rings, can you compete with a $6.7 behemoth that has all of these jewelry stores on different corners? Think about that for a second, right? I'm going to give you two scenarios. I love what these companies did. One, here is a product level value prop with an only factor, a direct competitor, right? Signet Jewelers, they sell a lot of different jewelry. One of the things is rings, right? So one of the challenges is, what this company found out, Desiderate, and I'll tell you how they found out, is that a big company like that sells a certain amount of ring sizes, right? The most common ring sizes, but they don't fit everyone's fingers. And so by getting closer to their customers, by listening to their customer service, by understanding why returns were going on, they were talking to some customers and they were finding out, you know what, some customers for some reasons have fingers that don't fit into the common ring sizes that are sold. I want to mention too, Desiderate, this is a small company. Like if people are listening on the phone, like I'm a small company, this is a small company, right? And so they had the idea, wait a minute, what if we just invented this category and made what we call plus size rings? Right. And they talked about, don't call us fat fingers, it's plus size rings. So they reached out and they found out there were, remember, don't need that big a total addressable market. Don't need every person that would possibly buy a ring. But they found this smaller market where they said, what if you have arthritis? What if you have diabetes? What if you are pregnant? What if you've just gained some weight? Well, then you have bigger finger sizes that can fit into rings, and they sold plus size rings and they outcompeted their competitors from that. Again, the whole case studies in the links below, you can see the whole thing, but just that idea of getting close to your customer, listening to customer service, finding out there's often in every market, big companies are going to try to tend to serve the big groups. And within those big groups, what is a small group that is being underserved? Maybe you are personally in it and that's why you started your company, right? Find those small groups that are being underserved. You will have an only factor. You have a profitable business. Doesn't need to be $6.7 billion, but it could be a profitable business because we're not just focusing on having the volume of our competitor. When you serve a small group really well, what do you get? You get good margins. That could be a very profitable business. All right, let's look at another example. And this can, I think, I'll break down. So how does that work, right? This is a direct competitor, similar products and revenue goals. Customer one's this thing, I want a stylish ring. That's going to fit. Most people just go to K Jewelers or Zales. That's going to work for you. But customer two, right, they're saying, I want that stylish ring, but my fingers are larger than average. They can't go to K Jewelers. That's where Desiderate is the better product choice for them. All right, let's look at example number two, process level value prop, the only factor. I have done, I don't know, hundreds, thousands of case studies in my career in Marketing Sherpa. This is just one of my favorite all-time case studies. I can't tell you how much I love this one. It is so clever. And this is a great healthcare example as well, right? So what happens, at least in most Western societies, if you want to ask someone to marry you, right? What do you need? What do you need to ask someone to marry you, right? What you often need is an engagement ring, right? That's nothing. Everyone does that. It's very common in our society. What does it take to get an engagement ring? $2,000, $4,000, $6,000, right? And who's often buying it? Obviously, there's different types of marriages, but there's a big group who buys it who are, I would say, male between the ages of 22 and 45, right? People who probably do not know a lot about buying engagement rings, not to mention something they're going to give to a future spouse who will wear for the rest of their lives and get the thing right. A lot of risk inherent here. So this great company that had this idea who also sold rings. Wait a minute. What if we just said, we'll just lend out a ring to you. You just need a ring to propose. We'll lend the ring out to you. Don't worry about buying it. We'll lend it out to you. What a great idea. For me personally, I will say, and I don't know if this would work for many people. I was in this boat many years ago. I didn't know what ring to get my now wife. So I made a ring out of a yellow paper clip. There's these colored paper clips, a yellow paper clip for the ring and a white paper clip for the diamond. I proposed to her out here on the beach. Thank God she said yes. And didn't say, I'm not marrying a guy who's giving me paper clips. And then we picked out the ring together, right? But if you don't do that, what would you do? So this is why this is so brilliant. And let's break this down, right? This is an indirect competitor. It's a similar product but a different revenue goal. This is another example when we mentioned about revenue goals. So this is what Signet brand is doing in most companies. Let's sell engagement rings so people have something to propose their future spouse with. It makes sense, right? They have a real reason to buy and propensity to buy. I've got to buy this thing because I need to propose, right? You essentially have that customer over a barrel. Let's force them into a ring. They have very little, ideas or information. They're going to pay way more than they would for another product because it's called an engagement ring. You got them over a barrel. Ring Command, that company comes along and says, well, wait a minute. We don't need to make money off of that moment where someone proposes. What if instead we use that as a lead generation moment and we just loaned an engagement ring, right? Now we get leads, we start the conversation, we build trust, and we're able to pull in all these potential customers that our media or marketing, our advertising budget, right? We're not like Signet, we can't advertise on the Super Bowl, wouldn't have let us do. That's an indirect competitor. Another thing they did when we talk about the no decision, they essentially lowered the stakes, right? And I mentioned this when we had the healthcare question as well. Every industry, some element of it is a commodity, right? Okay, I don't know what you do in healthcare. If you fix broken bones, yes, that part's a commodity. But the way in we deliver the service, there could be other elements, right, that are not commoditized. I did a great interview on how I made up marketing for that healthcare person. If they want to listen, they could reach out to me. I'll send it to them. There is now here in Jacksonville, they have the University of Florida has an ER/urgent care. And you basically go into there if you have a problem. And if it's an urgent care problem, they bill you as urgent care. If it's ER, they bill you as ER. But they help you no matter what. They serve your need. And there's actually a bigger company behind it that does this. They partner with US Health locally. They do it in many cities across the country. I think they're based in Dallas. I interviewed their CMO and they talk about the strategy. And they essentially did in healthcare, which you think is a commodity. You got a problem, go to the ER, go to the urgent care. They realized there's this problem with customers. And I hate to say, with my family, I've gone there many times since I interviewed that guy. You don't know, like, is this I don't want to go to the ER if it's not an ER problem because there's going to be a long wait. It's going to be more expensive, right? But then, well, what if I go to the urgent care and it's too big of a problem? They can't help me, right? What did they do? They came up with this new competitor. All right. Again, I'm not going to be here and I'm not going to sit here and tell you slides and be like, oh, this is easy. Now, like, beat, Amazon or the biggest competitors in the world, right? This stuff is hard. Let's talk about why it's hard so we can overcome that hardship, right? And when I say it's hard, that's not necessarily a bad thing. What I always encourage is you've got to wrestle with these ideas. There are no easy answers when it comes to your business strategy, your fundamental, way you're going to go about your business. But if you have the right approach to wrestle with it, you can come up with some innovative ideas like this. So Michael Porter, very famous, talked about, had this book, Competitive Strategy. When we came up with our value proposition methodology, our team researched a lot that had been, research of value proposition way before we ever came along. And that kind of went into our value proposition methodology. Michael Porter was one of the people. Read his books. He's a brilliant guy. You learn a lot from him. I'm just going to mention some just key insights about why it's so hard. One is about buyer value and understanding the customer, right? And this is what Michael Porter says. I won't read the whole thing, but uniqueness does not lead to differentiation unless it is valuable to the buyer, right? So this is why it's hard. As I mentioned, when we talk about that net vorce value proposition, right? That's that appeal. It's making sure you have something that's appealing to the customer. It's not enough to be unique. Here's why it's so hard as well, right? That criteria versus the signaling criteria. So criteria we talk about, that's actual value, right? Signaling criteria, that's perceived value, right? The customer doesn't know the real value of what you deliver until they experience the product. All we are doing with our marketing gets, sometimes people think of it as a dirty word. Marketing, they think of it all these other things. All marketing is doing is giving signaling criteria, what we would call perceived value. Right. And this is what Michael Porter says. Buyers will not pay for the value they do not perceive, no matter how real it may be. You do not know until you get it. I'll give you one example I love. Here in Jacksonville, there is, early in my career, I worked on this big real estate development called Queens Harbor. It's right on the Intercoastal Waterway. It's got a golf course. Jaguars players live there. It's beautiful. But here's the thing. You don't know how beautiful it is until you're inside. So what did they do? Right? You pull up to Queens Harbor, I don't know if anyone's been there, and the gate at the front is like Versailles. It is amazing. And so if you are going to buy a potential home or even a resale home, right, what is the real value of the home? Well, what was it built? Was it good two by fours, good roofs, and good designs? All these complex things you have to consider when buying a home that most people probably cannot figure out or think about or even fathom, right? But what can you get? Some perceived value. You pull up. There is this gorgeous gate you pull up to. You already have a perception of value. Oh, this is going to be a nice place. I don't know about everything they do, but they did this well. Not to mention what's going to happen after you buy it. All of your guests are going to pull up and see that gate. They're going to have that same perception, right? So when we talk about marketing, I want you to understand it's that perception of value, not the value you deliver, but the perceived value. And I hear this frustration all the time from small businesses about all these great things they do. But sometimes when I've gone to their website, it wasn't clear at all. We do these things called value proposition workshops. We do these quick win intensives where we sit for 2 days with the leaders of the companies. We build a value proposition with them. We find out where they may be leaking revenue. And a lot of times, what I learn most is not in that workshop itself. It's when we have lunch and I just ask a question like, why do you build this? How do you build this, right? So for example, we're working with a company that does those do-it-yourself security systems, right? And I looked at their landing page or homepage, a lot of their marketing, all this stuff beforehand. And they're talking at lunch. And we talked about like all this effort they made to make the setup so easy and how they programmed it to the system and all this cool stuff. And I would know nothing about that from going to seeing their marketer, website, landing page, any of this, right? So you have to ask yourself, I hopefully as a business, you are working really hard over here behind these four walls. It's hidden, creating value. Does the customer perceive it? That's where the clarity comes in. Do they really understand it? Right? And why is this so difficult to communicate and do and make all these changes and make these perceived changes that we talked about? This is a great quote from Keynes, his famous economist, right? It's not so much that it's hard to develop these new ideas. It's because you work in your company 40, 80, 100 hours a week, every day, every week. You've built the company, right? You have to make money in it. You have to pay your mortgage from that company. So you're so focused on the company. You've got all these ideas. But to be truly innovative, to create some good marketing, to see how the customer sees from outside of your company, to make sure they perceive the value, to make some of these changes to compete with your competitors, you've got to escape from your old ideas. And let me show you a way to do that, right? A way to do that, there's many ways to do that, but one way is to use AI. So when people think of AI, I think this misconception I hear is, oh, I'll just put in, AI will tell me the headline, or it'll build a page, it'll write an email, I'll just take it and it'll tell me what to do. No, it can. No. AI is great to get in the ballpark. One, to brainstorm with, to push the model. Matsuyoshi Son, if you know who he is, multi-billion dollar investor, right? And he uses AI to brainstorm, even at his level, right? With AI, brainstorm with it, build with it too. It'll give you headlines, it'll give you email, all of that, but it's going to get in the ballpark. You still need that human decision. You still need that human decision making. Don't give up on that. I say don't outsource your brain to AI. If you outsource your brain to AI while worried about being replaced by AI, then AI should replace you. If you're just doing everything it says. But if you use AI as the ultimate, I think of it as R2D2 behind Luke Skywalker, if you've seen Star Wars. It's that ultimate assistant, it's that ultimate brainstorm partner. Yes, have it write your stuff, but then go over it. That just gets 80% in the ballpark. So I'm going to show you in just a minute. I had a webinar last week with Score. We called it Get Unstuck. We had people send in their different submissions, and then we helped them overcome their challenges. I took one of those this week because I wanted an example just like you guys. This is from one of your peers, just someone who's in Score too, and I want to show how you can use it to brainstorm with AI. But before I show you that, I see, Shai, we have some more questions.
Yes, we have one question, and this is from John. John is asking, so what you're saying is when entering a market with direct competitors as large as Gatorade, it might be better to narrow our target market. That would allow us to gain market share more effectively as a replacement competitor to Gatorade, correct?
That's a very key point, yes. And if you remember that question that we asked, that value proposition questions, if I am your ideal customer, right? That's not the time, we don't have time to get into the whole ICP today, but that's exactly, you're right. It's tightly identifying your ideal customer. We make that mistake. Who do we want to serve? We want to serve everyone. Why do we want to serve everyone? We can make more money. No. If we serve everyone, we serve no one. who is that ideal customer you can serve better than anyone else, right? And that's where you're tightly defining it down to that market. So that's a great point, John. All right, so let's look at this point. This the Simple Stencil. This is actually a really good website. They do a lot of good things here. But I want to show you an example of how you can use AI to brainstorm and come up with these ideas. They can be hard on your own. Hopefully, just seeing other examples gets your mind going. But here's how you can use AI. So as I mentioned, this is our AI, MeclabsAI. It's got certain things programmed into it. Use whatever you want. But here's one thing we did. If you are just trying to find out your direct competitors, at least in our AI, that's not hard. We have a competitor analyzer app. You just take your website, you take a competitor website, put versus in there, and you can see it just breaks down how you are versus your competitor. So the direct competitor part, as I mentioned, I think that's the easier part. I think you're kind of already thinking of that already. Not that it's easy, it's just a little easier. It's less, let's say, innovative, right? But when you don't know where to start, when it comes to replacement competitors or indirect competitors. So here's what I did. I took competitor analyzer in MeclabsAI. You can, by the way, at the bottom of all of these slides, I mentioned the source link. So usually there's a case study that I have, a piece of content. Here, there's a link to the actual chats I did in MeclabsAI. You can click those links. You can get started for free. You can go in there, see the prompt I used, start over, use your own prompt, just type at the end, add to the prompt and play with it yourself, right? So just right at the bottom there, no source links, the chat is shared with you. I said, here's my company, put in the URL. I want to innovate my offering. Let's think blue sky and future. I said intense. That's a typo. In future tense. I don't want to know about current competitors. I want you to make 3 lists for me. List out potential future types of companies I could be a direct, indirect, or replacement competitor for. See what we're doing there? Exactly what I said in the beginning. You've got those bigger competitors. Think about how you can be one of these types of competitors for, right? So I did that. I listed everything out. It's too complex to show you everything. They're not going to be all good ideas. They're not going to be all the right fit for you. But I found one I liked. Not that it was perfect, but it gave me an idea, right? Experiential. So basically what this company does is they have wall decals that you can customize for your room. That's what they sell, right? And so it came up with this idea about a subscription-based experiential decor solution. Huh. Maybe it could be seasonal. Well, that's very different versus just, okay, I am the wall. I sell wall decals. This other company, Roommates Decor, is a direct competitor. We sell wall decals. I would have a better value proposition. Huh. What about this? The subscription service. I really got to, I don't know if you're like this. I'm a creative type of guy. Hopefully you're like this. You hear an idea, you start getting excited. The wheels start turning. What can we do with that? Oh my gosh, this is great. Seasonal. Every season for Valentine's Day in February, I could send wall decals that have to do with Valentine's Day, right? In the summer, I could send a beachy one, July 4th, and they could get a subscription every month. Instead of me trying to sell one wall decal to you, every month you could just change it out, because that's a great thing about these wall decals. When it looked at the value proposition of these decals, they're temporary. You can take it off, put one on, right? Now, look, honestly, I would never buy that. I'm not that guy. But I look around my neighborhood and I see some of the houses, they have these flags up, not the American flag I'm talking about. Every month they have a different flag. They've got the St. Patrick's Day one, right? They've got the one for Halloween, whatever it is. They're doing it on the outside. Maybe they'd like to do this on the inside, right? So it got the juices flowing. Huh. So what we talked about, it needs appeal and exclusivity. Exclusivity. Well, I searched wall decal subscription box. I did a quick search. There might be better terms. I did an exact match. I could be wrong, but I could not find anyone doing a wall decal subscription box. Now, there's 2 reasons for that. One is because it's a bad idea, right? You come up with some of these ideas, no one's doing it. They could have tried and failed. It could be a bad idea, in fairness. But 2, this could be an overlooked opportunity in the market that has appeal and exclusivity. It's got exclusivity. No one else is doing it, right? So what would that look like? So we got the exclusivity. No one else is doing it. I got that idea here. So that I told AI, okay, write up that appeal for me. So I use this app. We have this app. It's called Appeal Builder, right? It'll build the appeal for you. And it goes to why choose our subscription box. Again, I'm not saying I would do all of these things, but things like affordable luxury, that's a kind of neat idea. Infinite creative possibilities, right? Effortless style transformations. Not these exact words, but are these ideas good PPC ads, Facebook ads, blog posts, ways to pull people in, test out the subscription service, right? Not to mention, I'd have a whole different CPA, customer acquisition cost. For those other decals, they're probably buying it once. Boy, if I get someone to sign up for a year, that's a whole different lifetime value of the customer, whole bigger margins, right? So what does this look like, right? This we would call a replacement competitor. a replacement competitor. There's different things that could be a replacement competitor for. It could be for wallpaper. It could be for all different things, right? But let's say if I just targeted people who are buying subscription boxed already, they're buying Ipsy, they're buying Birchbox. Why are they buying them? Well, this is one customer, as we talked about, find the right customers. What's their time and money? They want to show they're on trend and express their personal style on social media posts. They want to get that attention and they want to do it with their physical looks. But what if there's another group, right? They still want to show they're on trend. They want to express their personal style. They want some nice posts for social media, but they don't want this focus on their attention and physical looks, right? So what could they post? Well, they could get this wall decor, home decor subscription box, and every month, hey, check out my home, right? Happy Thanksgiving. Boom. Look at this. I got my Thanksgiving set up or whatever it is, right? So that's an idea. I just wanted to walk through with you very specifically. Another small company like you, I gave you examples before. That's how you can use AI. If you're stuck, just start brainstorming with it. Don't do everything it tells you. Start brainstorming, start getting copy, start getting ideas, start getting moving forward. All right. Well, we got a few minutes left. I'm going to go through very quick, but I did promise you we talk about unspoken competitors. There's no decision. This can be one of your biggest competitors, right? Sometimes customers just don't act at all. It's popular for things like life insurance. They just don't want to deal with it. Here are a few things. You can go deeper in the slides. When you're trying to deal with no competitors, be careful about going negative. Here's a whole podcast interview. I love this guy, Dr. Yaniv Zed. He said, inspiration, not desperation. This was a health insurance company, right? And a big thing with insurance, we try to scare people, then they want to buy it. Sometimes we scare them. They just won't make a decision at all. They're overwhelmed by the decision. Lower the stakes, right? This was an example we saw with the engagement rings. People don't want to take this big risky mistake. They'll just wait. They don't want to make a mistake. Make it just a small thing they have to do. They can get a free trial, easy returns, money back guarantee. These are ways of lowering the stakes so they won't go to no decision. When it's a big, scary decision, we might just not make one. Understand the paradox of choice, right? This is the thing where you would think giving people many options is a good idea. Sometimes when you give people many options, they're overwhelmed and scared of making the right choice. They don't make any choice. They just keep putting it off. Now, once you simplify the choice as much as possible, then sequence the value. Sometimes there's only so much you can sequence it. So don't have them have to make the entire decision at once. Just have them make a small decision. Here's an example of an experiment we ran with Aetna's HealthSpire. That's a complex product. You can only simplify it so much. Before, they were selling their Medicare Advantage plans. After we changed it, not to sell the Medicare Advantage plan, just to sell the call with a tele agent who will help them, right? That's not a no decision. I could just make a call. If they really feel like someone's going to help them, I can just make a call. Choosing insurance, that's big and scary. And lastly, don't give them a reason to leave. Make that purchase experience easy and enjoyable, right? We did this research here very briefly. We asked satisfied and unsatisfied customers, what was the difference? A big difference was the purchasing experience. That's why people were unsatisfied right before they got to the product. DIY, I'll mention real quick. Sometimes customers can just do it themselves. How can you outcompete with that? I love Home Depot's example. What do? Right? One, they'll sell you the products to do it themselves. You want to do it yourself? I don't care. It's still profitable for us. We'll help you there. Two, they teach them how to do it themselves, right? You'll come buy the product because I'll show you how to do it. Fine, do it. I'll make money on the product. And three, if you come to me and I teach you and then you can't do it, then you might come to me and trust me and say, hey, I tried. I saw how complex it was. I can't do it. Can you do it for me? Right? So that's how to deal with those customers. We got probably over time here. Go a few more minutes if you have any more questions. I'll leave you with 2 words of encouragement. One, stay agile. This is a quote from one of my podcast interviews. I love this. Be passionate about the challenge you are trying to solve and not stubborn about the product solution. You are not the product you sell. Never forget that. You are the solution you give to your customer. When we talk about outfoxing your competitors, sometimes there's a different way to do it. For him, he was trying to sell this software, and he realized at first they needed to go to market as an agency because people weren't and companies weren't ready to use the software by themselves. They had to help them as an agency. The second word of encouragement, always stay close to the customer. This is not from my podcast, a great podcast called Big Shot. I've got the link at the bottom. They were interviewing the founder of Panera Bread. How did he come up with the idea for Panera? He worked the register. He didn't have to. When you were a bigger company, it's a company called All Bon Pan. That was a company before Panera. He worked the register even when he didn't have to, but he got close to the customers. And what he saw was customers would come up, order a baguette, and ask him to slice it. So he would slice it, boom, 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 little slices. And they said, no. Slice it the long way. So he sliced it, and then he saw they had gone to the local grocery store, and they were putting their own meat and cheese on there. And he realized, he said, it didn't take a Harvard MBA to figure it out. We should be selling sandwiches. They really like the bread, but they want the sandwiches. And that's how he came up with Panera. So stay close to the customer. All right. We got a bunch of free resources. There's me. Feel free to reach out. LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, email, whatever you need. Let me know. I'll help if I can. With that, we're gone a minute over time. But if we have any more questions, Shaya, I'm happy to answer them and help people.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was really helpful and really great presentation. We don't have any questions. If anyone has a question, please feel free to put it in the Q&A. Please also remember that the recording for this workshop webinar will be sent out 5 business days after today. 5 business days after today. So you will likely receive this in the middle of next week. So thank you all so much for attending. If you don't have any questions, I would just say thank you, Daniel, again. This was so good.
All right, thanks everyone. Again, if you want the slide, just go to my LinkedIn. I'll post them there right after this. Thank you everyone for testing. Thank you, Shaya, for hosting. I really appreciate your time. She
My
volunteered.
absolute
Everyone should
pleasure.
thank her. Thank her in the chat.
My absolute pleasure. Love to support, and I learn so much every time. So this was really good. Thank you all for attending today. We had, I think, about 93 on. Yes, he does have a website. His link is actually in the chat, but if you screen grab this, I would say take a screenshot of this and you can copy it from the screenshot. And we're also going to be sending this out. And if you go to his LinkedIn, you can grab the slides. His LinkedIn also has his website on there as well. Thank you all again so much. Have a great rest of your week, everyone. Thank you again, Daniel. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye.